All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we're going to be looking at the Great Depression. How did it happen? Why? How did it affect the world? Okay, so let's look at the objectives today. So, we're going to analyze the effects tariffs had on European countries. We're examine the effects of the Great Depression had on European countries, and we're going to create an argument on who is largely to blame for it, for the Great Depression. Okay. So here is your warm up picture. Okay. Now, my question I'm asking you is kind of like a two-part thing. One, what do you think this artist is trying to say about the old man? Now, the old man you see in there represents the countries around the world. So look what's around him. Look at the words he's saying, and look at the water. Okay. And what do you think is going to happen next? So look at the lady, look at the water near her. Look what it says. So what do you think is going to happen next? Okay. So again, analyze the picture, think about it, write your response, okay? Because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So what is a depression? A depression is a period when there is a low economic activity and a rise in unemployment. Okay. Um, and the thing is, we have had several depressions in the history of the world. But this one is was unlike any other, and this is why it was known as the Great Depression. Okay. Now, what created this? Two major things led to the Great Depression of 1929 around the world. Number one, the prices of farm products fell rapidly due to overproduction. Now, excuse me, we talked about this before. That when there's a lot of something, whatever the thing is, whether there's bottles of water, things like that. If there's a lot of something, the price for it shrinks. Why? Because you can find it anywhere, right? It's only when something is very rare that's where the prices jump up extremely high. So what happened was a lot of farmers saw that people were paying a high price for wheat, corn, cotton, potatoes, things like that. So they started saying, hey, well, let's make a bunch of wheat, let's make a bunch of corn, and make a bunch of cotton and sell it at this high price that it's at right now. Here's the thing though. Do you think they were the only person who saw that? Who thought that? I mean, farmers thought, wow, the price of wheat is really high. Let's plant a bunch of wheat. All the other farmers around the world did that. And that's what happened. Everyone else was making wheat and corn and cotton. So the price of them didn't stay up here that long because everyone was making it. The price shot down. Okay. Now, of all the farmers around the world, the US farmers were hit the hardest. Not only because of how low the price went down, but also the United States was going through a major drought. So they couldn't make that much wheat, corn, and cotton. So the little they did have, the price of it, because it was so short, they didn't get much money. And that's not good. Excuse me. The other one was international financial crisis, which involved the US stock market. Okay. Now, prosperity laid mostly on the US loans to Germany, which, if you remember from the last lesson, was the Dawes Plan. Okay. Now, in 1928, a lot of US investors took their money out of Germany. Remember, the US was going to give money to Germany. Germany was then going to put that to their economy so that their money could then be worth something, and then they would pay France off, and then France would then buy stuff from the US as well as Germany. But again, what happened was investors started taking their money out. They started saying, no, 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 no. Why give our money to Germany? Why invest in Germany when we could put it in the stock market because the stock market's really getting really, really high day by day, and we can make a ton more money that way. And it'll be faster we can make that much money. So greed got the best of those people. And in October 1929, the stock market crashed. And when I mean crash, we're talking crash and burn type of thing. Stocks went from worth hundreds of dollars to nothing within a matter of days, and in some places, in some stock, a matter of minutes. So imagine you have something, a stock worth $800, and all of a sudden, before you can even say anything, it's now worthless. It's now worth like 3 cents. Yeah, that's what happened to some people. Now, like I said earlier, Europe was no stranger to economic depressions. They've had them in the before. But again, like I said, this was unlike anything anyone has seen in the past or heard of. Again, that's why the 1929 crash is known as the Great Depression. Now, in Britain, 1 in 4 people couldn't find a job. And when I mean they couldn't find a job, I mean they could not find a job. Not like, oh, well, this place is not hiring. I'll just go to this other place. No, no place was hiring. So it's not like these people couldn't find a job. There were no jobs. Nobody was hiring at all. Very few factories even had more than a skeleton crew. In Germany, 5.5 million people, which is about 30% of their country back then, couldn't find a job either. So imagine 5.5 million people trying to find a job every day, but they can't because there's no jobs. The streets were filled with unemployed people and homeless people, men, women, children. It didn't matter. Things were getting very, very bleak and grim for the people in Europe. Now, since this was like any other depression, the old, oh, we'll just watch. This thing will pass by, this depression, because this was unlike any other. And that whole mentality, the old mentality, was basically worthless. Governments panicked like crazy. All right. What they decided to do was try to help businesses. Okay. And they supported them in anything they did, which was honestly one of the stupidest things they could have done because businesses only care about themselves. They don't care about the workers or for the people. And this is a time when they should have been looking out for the people. So what they did is they lowered wages and they hoped to get their citizens to buy things from their country. Now, here's the thing, this is where they're not thinking. How can their citizens buy things from their country when the citizens are not making money? Those who have jobs are now being paid less. So if you're getting paid less, you're not going to go off and buy furniture. You're not going to buy, fresh new clothes, things like that. You're going to make do with what you have because you don't have money to spend on other things. The only thing you're going to spend your money on is, your rent, mortgage, keep a roof over your head and food. Maybe keep the heat on. That's about it. So that's what I mean. These people did not think about that kind of stuff. And what they were afraid of was people buying things from other countries. Why? Because things from other countries tend to be cheaper. And if they people bought things from other countries, that money, those dollars they bought for that item would go to those countries. So they wanted to keep the money in the country. Okay. Okay. Because it's proven that, hey, it helps when Americans or whichever country they buy from their own country. But a tariff, it doesn't help people as well as lowering the wages. So this made things worse, and there was huge political ramifications because of this. Because these politicians did that, there was a repercussions, consequences that happened afterwards. So, due to a lack of confidence in capitalism economy, some countries started looking at the Marxist ideas. Now, Karl Marx is that guy you see up in the top picture. Um, he basically predicted that under capitalism, overproduction would happen. Which, I mean, you don't have to be a scientist to realize that. Hey, if somebody's going to ask, going to pay $1,000 for a used pair of shoes, everyone will be taking out their shoes to sell to that person. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to do that, to know that. But basically, that's what he's saying. When eventually, sometime the price of something will be high, and people will make a ton of it because they want to sell at that top price. But because everyone made it, the price is going to shoot down. And when that happens, the market will collapse, which that's exactly what happened. Okay. Now, because that happened, communism became a very popular um, idea amongst workers and intellects. People who, excuse me, were looking at this stuff going, this makes sense. And capitalism failed, so maybe we should try, you know, communism. Now, also with the Great Depression, it made people follow political leaders who offered simple solutions in exchange for more power, to be like a dictator, or an emperor type of thing. So democracy actually started dwindling in the 1930s around the world. And this is going to eventually lead up to World War II and people like Hitler and Stalin and Mussolini. Now, here's the thing I thought was funny. Well, not really funny, it was kind of just interesting. In most democratic countries, women couldn't vote. Now, the US, women barely got the right to vote in the 1920s. In France, it wasn't until 1944. In Italy, 1945. And in Switzerland, 1971. Now, why is this significant? Because you have to remember who's the people who are basically spending the money in the household? The women. Who knows when the price of things go high, low, things like that? Who notice that stuff? Women do. And if there was any type of economic policy or discussion in politics of what we should do, women couldn't vote on it. Because again, a lot of women couldn't vote in a lot of countries around the world. Okay. It got to the point, like in Germany, where they lost imperial powers. So that any countries around the world that they own property to, they lost it. Inflation made their money worthless. So people spent their whole life saving money to retire off of and things like that. But because of World War One and because of the inflation and the Great Depression, their money was worthless. So you see this lady right here. Those are dollar bills, you know, $100,000 bills, and she's gonna burn them. Why? Because that money is worthless. You might as well get trash from the streets because that was worth more than that dollar bill. So a lot of people burn the money because, hey, I'd rather start my stove so I can cook my meals to keep my house warm than have it because it's meaning nothing right now. This money is worthless, and this fear gave rise to extremist political parties, which we're going to be talking about next class. Okay. Now, France, of all the European countries, France was actually the most strongest. And they were a little bit more wiser with their money and their power and things like that. But even they felt the effects of the Great Depression. They couldn't hold out forever. And they didn't feel the effects until 1932. So it took about good 3 years with the whole world going through the Great Depression for France to finally feel the pressure of it. And this also gave to political chaos in their country for communism, socialism, and radical reform. And this became known as the Popular Front. Now, the Popular Front started new programs for workers. They call it the French New Deal. It was named after the American New Deal, which FDR did, which you'll learn about in next year when you're in U.S. history. Now, what did this do? It gave workers the power to negotiate wages with companies, also implemented 40-hour work week, paid vacation, and a new thing called minimum wage. All these things, guys, brand new. These were things that people never thought of. It just blew people's minds. Wait, you're meaning that we only had to work 40 hours a week minimum? Wow. Anytime, anytime we work after that's overtime, we get paid to go on vacation. There's a minimum amount of money the company can pay me. Total mind blown for these people back then. Now, Britain, when the war ended, coal, steel, and textile companies went into decline. They weren't making that much money. So unemployment, those type of industries started sinking, and unemployment rose to about 2 million in 1921. Now, when we get to the Great Depression, that number is going to jump up even higher. But the Great Depression hit them hard too. The Labor Party lost their power, and the conservative group took over. And they basically went to the old traditional ways of getting out of economic problems. One was stabilizing the budget. If we can't afford it, we're not going to spend money on it. You know, why put ourselves in the debt? If we only have $20 million, we're going to spend $20 million worth of stuff. We're not going to spend 25. And then they put tariffs on things. They made sure that the British people bought things from Britain, you know, and that would help stabilize their country. Okay. All right. So here's my question to you. During a time when people are financially hurt, but a country needs money, do you think it's more important for people to buy things made in their own country or to look for the cheapest thing? So, you see it all the time. People say, buy American, because that helps out our country. That really does help out our country. But at the same time, you're on a budget. You may not have that much money. So you have to look for that lowest price so you can still buy something and still have a little bit of money afterwards, maybe, or buy something else that you might need. So where does your loyalty as a shopper and as a citizen of your country, where does it fall into? Helping your country or helping yourself? Where do you spend your money on? Helping the country or helping yourself? Where do you find that? And you cannot say both. Okay? You cannot say both because that makes no sense. Because again, a lot of countries, basically everywhere around the world, it's cheaper to buy something from a foreign country. Okay? So you cannot say, oh, I would do both. Because again, that's an automatic zero on this part of the writing. Because you have to pick one or the other. You cannot do both. Okay? So think about it, write your response. Okay? Once you're finished, that's it for this lesson. Okay? So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. All right. So with that being said, you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.